All right, what's up, guys? I am live here on YouTube. And before getting into a Q&A style, so make sure you guys get your questions ready. I just want to give you guys an update on the farmhouse, which I'm clearly sitting in, and our egg production and how you guys can get a hold of our eggs and what we're working on behind the scenes. So first, yes, I am sitting in the farmhouse. I feel that it is safe enough right now. We're not yet moved back in. There's still some remediation to be done. However, a lot of the mold was removed and a lot of the mycotoxins were cleared out. There's going to be another round of cleaning after we redo the ductwork and the HVAC. But exciting times. Can potentially be moved back in just a few weeks, which I'm really excited to do because it's just a pain in the butt to drive 20, 25 minutes each day to the farm to take care of the chickens. So yeah, exciting news on the house. And then for our eggs, so you guys know that we have layers here at our farm, Angel Acres. If you guys are not yet following the Angel Acres YouTube channel, make sure you guys are subscribed to that channel. I'll include a link in the description below where we're documenting starting the farm from scratch. And then we're focusing more of the Strong.Sistas content on health, wellness, nutrition, working out. But I wanted to provide some updates on the eggs. So we are trying to produce low PUFA eggs, and we're really excited about this. However, we experienced some difficulties with the packing and shipping. We're working on that behind the scenes, and we should be ready to ship out in just 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks or so. But if you are interested in Angel Acres eggs right now, there's a few ways that you can currently get them. So first is to visit Angel Acres. So we are in Southwest Michigan. I will include our email in the description below for the Angel Acres farm. So you can email the farm to schedule time to come to the farm. We are in Southwest Michigan to pick up eggs. And then you can also get eggs delivered to your door if you are in select cities in the state of Michigan. So we will be selling our eggs and our lamb products through Apsey Farms, which is a partnership of Regenerative Farms. And right now, Apsey Farms does at-home delivery in select cities in the state of Michigan. And then they also ship packages directly to your door. But we're not yet shipping. We're not yet at that stage. But if you are eligible for home delivery for Apsey Farms, then you can get Angel Acres eggs dropped off at your door if you purchase a meat order. So those cities are Kalamazoo, Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. I'm going to forget a few. Traverse City, Michigan, Cadillac, and Big Rapids. So if you guys are in any of those cities in Michigan, you can get Angel Acres eggs delivered to your door. But stay tuned really soon for when we will be able to ship eggs. And we're going to do a giveaway on our Angel Acres Instagram channel. So make sure you guys are following along there to get the details on the giveaway. So yeah, that is the update here. Really exciting things ahead. Really excited to be moved back into this house. It will just make life a lot easier, and I'll save a lot of time. But yeah, okay. So you guys are free to ask questions. Just want to do a live Q&A, check in with everyone, see how you guys were doing. So first question from Mike in the chat is, obviously they are the ultimate in egg nutrition, but do you think Angel Acres eggs taste any different? I think so. I'm biased, definitely. But we're ultimately striving for like the healthiest fatty acid profile you can find, which is really hard to find these days because so many farms, regenerative or pasture raised or not, still rely on corn and soy, sunflower, and other feed ingredients. And that's going to directly impact the fatty acid profile of the eggs. So I think they taste amazing. But you will have to see, Mike. You'll have to place an order in a few weeks and see. We'll definitely get some testimonials up on the website. But again, those will be available to purchase on the Apsey Farms website, www.apseyfarms.com. Okay, so Austin Brown, we shipped him eggs. He was a test egg shipment. He's in Michigan, and he said, I vouch for them. So Austin said that they're good. So stay tuned, guys. Hi, Kyle. My boyfriend Kyle is on. Hello. So Louise said, hi, how is your hypothalamic amenorrhea recovery going? Are you following Ray Peat's advice? So that's a great question. So hypothalamic amenorrhea, loss of period. So I do not yet have my period. However, it is going to take a long time for my recovery. I had amenorrhea for 12 years, and so I dug myself into a huge stress hole from a number of factors, definitely orthorexia, being too lean all year round for no reason. So I really have reflected on like my why on certain things, over exercising, abusing fasting for sure, and zero carbohydrate intake. I think that all of those factors played a role. So yeah, I'm still in recovery. I'm definitely following many of the pro-metabolic nutrition strategies, Ray Peat nutrition strategies. But I think that it's more than just nutrition. I think that it's lifestyle factors as well. So sleep is a huge focus of mine because sleep is ultimately where we're doing a lot of recovery, right? So good sleep, making sure that I'm not over exercising. I'm working out here at the farmhouse 2 to 3 times a week. Light exercises. I really miss the gym. I really miss powerlifting, but those things would work against my goals right now. And I'm not focusing on cardio or fat loss or anything like that. And trying to implement stress relieving activities, which is definitely hard when you are trying to start a lot of businesses from scratch. So life is certainly stressful right now. Like there are some stressors that are unavoidable when as an entrepreneur and starting businesses from scratch. So I'm making sure that I take time out of my day to do my enjoys, right? And honestly, I get a lot of enjoyment out of taking care of the chickens. So to me, like that's a nice stress relief. I can just be out in nature. I don't bring my phone with me all the time, outside getting sunlight. And yeah, spending time with my loved ones and important people in my life. So not yet there, but guys, I know it's coming. I feel it coming. And I'm excited to share with you guys my full recovery here soon. I'm optimistic. Okay, so Tiff said, I missed the first couple of minutes. Are you able to ship to California? So off the bat, we are going to have a limited shipping window, but we will work to expand our shipping window. We are going to do the Great Lakes region and a few other states outside of the Great Lakes region. It's kind of like an expanded Midwest. And we're going to start there, but then we will work behind the scenes to improve our packing and make sure that we can ship to further states. It's just difficult because like UPS and FedEx, like if you're using those type of shipping people, they throw the boxes around a lot. And so you really have to make sure that the eggs are secure. Eggs are really fragile. And so, yeah, we have to secure the box without spending like $50 on like cushions and padding and foam. So we have to find a reasonable way to ship you guys eggs. So we're going to start relatively close to where we're located just to make sure that it's working and getting that set up. And then over time, we'll hopefully expand. I'd love to be able to reach California eventually. That's the goal. Okay, so SpongeBob Dean Carroll said, what do you prefer, the Jimmy Neutron movie or the TV show? I don't know. I don't know if I've seen either of those. Okay, we're going to keep the questions more to like nutrition and health or Angel Acres farming related. Okay. Someone said, could you please describe the mold detoxification protocol, please? That's a very deep question. We are not yet on the other end of that. And so I prefer to wait on that until we get all of our testing back that one, the mold is detoxed from us, and then also our home levels are safe. But it involves home remediation. It involves removing yourself from the environment. You're not going to get better in a moldy house. And that's a huge part of health that I don't think many people are talking about, is like the quality of your environment. That toxin load is ultimately just more stress in your stress bucket. And so it can really tip you over the edge and cause negative health consequences. It certainly did for us. But some of the things that we did involved some simple things would be sauna a few times a week and using like natural binders such as activated charcoal, and then taking tests such as the OATS test, OATS, and mycotoxin tests we did through Great Plains Laboratory to get an idea of the mold level inside of you and what types of mold you have inside of you. And then that will help you better choose which binders or natural herbs that you should use to target those detoxification pathways to get rid of those mold or mycotoxins in your body. So that's kind of like a general overview. I would definitely suggest getting your house tested for mold, specific types of mold, and then also the oats and the mycotoxin test to see what's happening inside of you as well. Okay, someone said, do you have ducks at your farm? So no, we do not yet have ducks. Would be interested in getting ducks in the future, but I think that chickens and lamb are going to be enough for year one. If we add 1 or 2 ducks into the mix, I don't think it'll be a big deal. But as of right now, no. Okay. How often do you use the charcoal, and do you use it on an empty stomach? So I'm really hesitant to taking anything on an empty stomach. However, it's important to know that binders are going to affect nutrient absorption from other foods. So like if, for example, if you have a meal with like liver and you take activated charcoal, that could negatively affect that your body is like absorbing those nutrients. And so that's always something to consider. However, when you're focusing on like detoxing mold, it really is a balance of like detoxification with your nutrient intake. And you're not going to be able to optimally absorb all of your nutrients when you're really focusing and prioritizing detoxification. But just know that like at the end of the detoxification and like you are cleared out, then you can get back to really focusing and optimizing your nutrient intake. But I am really hesitant to taking a lot of stuff on an empty stomach, like for example, early in the morning. But we were taking our binders like between meals. And it's important to time your binder with the sauna, because that will help improve the detoxification of certain pathways. Okay. Someone said, would you ever keep bees for the honey income? I would love to have bees on the farm. I think that having bees really helps build an ecosystem, and ultimately like nature thrives with diversity. And so I think that would help like all facets of the farm. And I eat a lot of honey, so I would really enjoy the honey, and we would try to sell it too, but that would definitely be something further down the line. Going to try to stay a little bit focused from the start, since we are first generation farmers starting all of this from scratch. So did you change your diet after finding out about the mold? So no, we really didn't tweak that much. However, one of the ways I knew that the mold affected me was through my digestion. My digestion was great before the mold symptoms started popping up. And then I noticed some negative digestion symptoms such as constipation when I included starches. So initially I stopped consuming starches for a couple of months, and I noticed then my digestion improved. And that's because a lot of the mold issues for me weren't necessarily the mycotoxin, which is like mold farts, like mold burps. But I was holding on to mold in my gut based on my oats and mycotoxin tests. And so I experienced gut dysbiosis from the mold exposure. And I think that negatively affected my ability to digest starches. So like potatoes, rice. I tried making sourdough bread on my own, and all of those were leading to like constipation. So I stopped that for a while and focused on detoxifying the mold. And I have added potatoes and rice back in recently, and my digestion is great. So to me, that tells me that I've done a really good job with detoxifying a lot of the mold that was in my gut. But other than that, I really didn't change anything else. I think that it's important to assess your like gut status and your gut dysbiosis, because a lot of people can have negative symptoms to starches, because starches can travel further down your digestive tract without being broken down. And so the starches can feed bacteria further down in your digestive tract. And so focus on clearing out that bad bacteria, and assessing like which foods are working for you at a given point in time. Ultimately, the goal of any nutrition strategy should be to like be able to include things you enjoy, not feel restricted, and have diversity in your food options. But there could be moments in time, like a few months or a year, where you have to avoid certain things while you're fixing your gut dysbiosis and things like that. So, but gut or digestion is good now with starches. I like to include potatoes regularly, well-cooked potatoes, because they actually have a number of nutrients, and I feel good afterwards, and my digestion is not negatively impacted anymore. So, okay. Someone said, do you have a rough estimate of how many carbs a day you are trying to get in? So I think that I don't like to include numbers, because what I consume is going to be different from someone else. But I do think that experimenting with ratios is super important. So if someone is trying to like figure out and determine their macros, I think they should always start with like what their protein needs are. You should try to hit your protein. Protein is super important, and focus on animal protein. I like to have people just start at 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, consuming 150 grams of protein is an easy starting point. Some people do better with a little bit less than that. And then from there, experiment what your carb to protein ratio is that you feel good. And the way that I would experiment is, one, documenting like how you feel. Are you super tired? How's your digestion? But then also using your body temperature and your pulse. So this is one of Ray Peat's principles. So in the morning, measure your body temperature and pulse. And then after breakfast, measure your body temperature and pulse. If those go down, then that meal isn't necessarily working for you. It's not improving your metabolism. It's not helping your thyroid. So experiment with your carb to protein ratio such that you feel good, and then you also see a rise in your body temperature and your pulse after a meal. So a good starting place would be 2 times the number of carbs per protein in a meal. So let's say you have 30 grams of protein in a meal. Try 60 grams of carbs in that meal. And then the amount of fat that you will have at that meal will depend on your needs, whether you are focusing on fully nourishing yourself like myself, or if you're in a fat loss phase, like that fat and lever can go up or down. So let's say 15 grams of fat or something like that at that meal. So just experiment with your ratios. It's always important to keep in mind that like protein is your building block, and then carbs and fats are your energy source. And so you don't really want to force your body to rely on gluconeogenesis and convert proteins into energy. That's just adding to your stress bucket. And it's also forcing like unnecessary gluconeogenesis, in my opinion. So I would just run an experiment on yourself and see where you feel good. I've heard of some people who need higher carbs to protein ratio. I have found like a 2-to-1 works well for me at any given meal. And then obviously your caloric needs will really vary depending on how active you are, and what your current goals are, whether that's like maintenance or fully nourishing, or if you are in a weight loss phase and you're doing it in a sustainable manner. Hope that helps. Okay. Someone said, could you partner up with other super egg producers to sell eggs in other states? I'm in California. That would be a really cool thing in the future, but I've got to figure it out here first. We just started. So we just expanded our egg operation these last couple of months. And I want to get some like tests done to confirm that our eggs are really nutritious and have great fatty acid profile. But that could be a really good idea in the future, but need to like make sure that we're nailing it down here at Angel Acres with our ladies, our layers here. Okay. Okay, what grams of fats on this new macros proportion? So like I said, I'll get into this a little bit more. I think start with your protein and then experiment with the carb to protein ratio that you feel best on. And then I kind of lean towards a little bit higher fat than some of the people in the pro-metabolic and repeat community recommend. And I think that a lot of them say lower fat because that's easier to avoid excessive PUFA polyunsaturated fatty acid intake. You're never going to get 0 grams of PUFAs. However, I do think that it's important to limit and that your exposure to PUFAs where you can avoid them. Like, for example, don't like pound down a bunch of peanuts and things like that. But I think that if you can choose like high quality and if you can choose and focus on high quality animal saturated fats, I personally feel better with like including a good amount of fats. So for me, that's anywhere from like 70 to 85 grams of fat a day. Really depends on like my hunger levels and what I'm doing that day. But just, I would say the most important thing is starting with your protein and then finding that like carb to protein ratio where you can get that increase in your body temperature. And then moving your fats up and down for your needs. So whether you're in a like maintenance or fully nourishing or a sustainable fat loss goal. And then also like where you feel satiated. So I noticed that like if I do 0 fat meals, I'm not really like satiated at that meal. And so that's why I do think that it's important to include fat. I try to include fat in every single like snack or meal. But we don't want to overdo it. Like, no, I am not proposing a high carb and a high fat diet. I don't think that that's going to lead anyone to great success down the line. But I am not a proponent of low fat because fat is super important, especially for female hormones and satiety. And then also like all the fat soluble vitamins, so many good nutrients in that. Okay. Sorry guys, it's hard to read this as it's going. Someone said, do you consume rice or potatoes? So yeah, I would say that one thing that I like to do at each meal is if I'm going to include starches, make sure that I include a sucrose source as well to help lower like blood sugar rise and blunt insulin response. So because like starches are going to lead to a higher rise in insulin and a higher spike in blood glucose, whereas like fructose sources don't require insulin to enter the cells and they don't have as big of a spike. So I like to, if I'm going to have like potatoes at a meal, I also like to include a little bit of fruit or a little bit of honey or something like that. Just a super easy way to incorporate that. But I would say the starches that I feel good on, and this could vary person to person. I feel good on white rice and well-cooked potatoes. And then I do like well-cooked sweet potatoes from time to time as well. I did try making my own like einkorn sourdough bread a few months ago, but that was when I had pretty bad gut dysbiosis from the mold. But I'd love to be able to include that from time to time in the future with some homemade sourdough. And so, yeah, I would say those are my kind of favorite starches at the moment. But my carb sources are those, and then squashes, fruit, honey, and then I get some carbohydrates from raw milk as well. Okay. What's your opinion on 1/3 of every macronutrient? Okay, so that would be like you split your calories and do like 33% of those calories for carbs, 33% for fat. So like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And I think that can work for some people. I would say that that's definitely more of like a Chris Masterjohn style. He recommends like roughly 30% of your calorie intake from fats. I say that I am a little bit closer to that. I don't think I'm at 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But ultimately, experiment to find what works best for you. I think that if your goal is like weight loss, I would say that that's not the best macro split, but you need to find where it's sustainable, enjoyable, it is working for your metabolism and thyroid, so you're seeing those increases in body temperature and pulse. So yeah, experiment to find what works best for you. But I would say I would probably be a little bit more carbs and a little bit less fat, but I'm not low fat. No one's proposing low fat. Okay. Someone said, I feel much better being cognizant of my PUFAs. Guys, I really think that was like a huge improvement, like a huge stepping point in improving the way that I feel and my body's utilization of glucose. So PUFAs are going to negatively impact how our body's usage of glucose. And so I think that if you are going to include carbohydrate sources, to make sure that you're not overdoing the PUFAs. Don't be super like orthorexic about it. From time to time, it's not a big deal, and you can't fully avoid PUFAs. Beef contains PUFAs, butter contains PUFAs, but to a smaller degree than soy oil, vegetable oil, a bunch of nuts and seeds. Like those are really higher in PUFAs relative to these other things. So limit your exposure to those items and focus more on saturated fats. So along the lines of saturated fats, someone said, does the coconut butter you posted on Instagram taste like coconut? I can't imagine that would be tasty on potatoes. So the other day I had potatoes, and then I put some coconut butter. It's called like coconut manna. I'm a fan of coconut because it's high in saturated fat. And I thought it tasted really good on potatoes. I sometimes put honey on my potatoes. My favorite is obviously butter on potatoes, but I didn't have any butter that day. So to add fat to my meal, I added the coconut butter, which is coconut manna. It's really good. Would definitely recommend. Okay. Someone said, drove through Cassopolis on trip to Detroit on Saturday. Shout out to Baker's Rhapsody, Woodfire, Trattoria, and Sailor's Pizza in Dowagiac, Michigan. So hello to someone else from Southwest Michigan. So someone said, what should chickens eat on pasture? Bugs? ? So I think that in order to be a productive farm and have a reasonable egg production, you have to supplement with feed. I don't think that doing just bugs on the pasture would be enough to keep up for their needs. So we do supplement them with a corn and soy-free organic feed. We had it custom made. I was working with a livestock nutritionist, so we had that custom made. So our animals do supplement that in addition to food scraps and and then whatever bugs they find out on the field. Someone said, please invite Georgie Dinkov again. I really enjoyed my series with Georgie, and exciting news. Sarah and I are starting a podcast. We're working on a lot of things right now, so it's definitely going to be a slow launch, but excited to convert some of our previous interviews on YouTube into podcasts. And then moving forward, our YouTube interviews would be on our podcast channel as well. So we'll still post the interviews on YouTube, but then also have it on on the Apple Podcasts. And we're just going to call it Strong.Sistas podcast. So stay tuned for that. Should be coming somewhat soon. I can't promise that promise a date right now, but I'm really excited about that. And I'd love to get Georgie back on. I really enjoy my conversations with him. Someone said PUFA cognizance is kind of a big deal and that they were eating too much pork. So yeah, ultimately pork from confinement operations is going to have a decent amount of PUFAs, not as high as like chicken from confinement. Because if you think about those animals, they are like just in a barn, they're stationary, and they're just fed corn and soy. And so monogastric animals, chicken and pork, they are a direct reflection. Their fatty acid profile is kind of a direct reflection of the fats that they consume. And so those animals will have, they're eating corn and soy, and so it's going to have higher amounts of PUFAs in their fatty acid profile as well. That's why if you're going to eat chicken and pork, make sure you buy it from your local farmer, and make sure that it's pasture raised. I'm just going to throw in another plug for Apsey Farms for some great pasture raised pork and pasture raised chicken. And if you're not in the shipping window for Apsey Farms, make sure you go to www.eatwild.com to find your local farmer. Someone said, okay, whoops, I messed up where we were. What are your thoughts on Lmnt mineral supplements? Do you take any? I don't take any mineral supplements. Fruits and fruit juices and milk are really rich in minerals, so that's where I get my minerals. And so I think that it's kind of funny that people on keto and carnivore are having to supplement a lot of minerals from like Lmnt and things like that, where if you do decide to include some carbohydrates, you can get them naturally. But I do not think that there's anything wrong with mineral supplements. I just don't want to spend money on them right now, so I'm choosing to get most of them from my food. But I would be careful on the ingredients of these mineral supplements. I noticed a huge improvement in my digestive system when I cut out a lot of artificial sweeteners, and I know that a lot of them do include that. And yeah, so the only thing that I would say that I add to my water is magnesium bicarbonate, since that's how our ancestors used to get magnesium way back in the day. But our water system is so messed up that we have to like filter it out. So like we have a reverse osmosis filter here, for example, but then the water doesn't have any like minerals. So I like to add magnesium bicarbonate back into that. And then obviously just use a ton of salt. And then like for potassium, for example, I like to use like coconut water. And then fruits are actually pretty rich in minerals, and so are potatoes. But if you feel better with those, and that's your only way to get them, absolutely. Like if the choice is to not get minerals versus take mineral supplements, like yes, just make sure you find one that you trust and doesn't have weird ingredients like ascorbic acid and things like that. So just make sure you check the ingredient list and determine whether or not it's like causing any digestive stress or anything like that. Okay, someone said, is it possible to have a lot of muscle and low body fat without being chronically stressed? I think that is so person dependent, because lifestyle factors play a huge role in your stress bucket, right? So if you are someone who is like starting a business and is working like 100 and something hours a week, and then you're also having to do a lot of cardio to keep that fat, like body fat down, or like go to the gym a lot, and you don't have time for like actual stress reduction and relaxation time, then you could be chronically stressed. But it really depends on like your past, and like where you're at right now with your current life. Like for example, did you go through like a breakup, or are you moving, or like certain lifestyle stresses that are unavoidable? And I also think that it differs from females to males. Females are not little men. I think that females are a lot more sensitive to being super lean than males are. But I would note that when you have more muscle, you have a faster metabolism. And it's almost like you have to, like, it's a commitment. So like having more muscle and having a faster metabolism, like requires commitment and fully nourishment and more fuel. So just as a note there. Okay, there's been a lot of questions. All right, what relevance do you think Ray Peat's guidelines have to someone with hypothalamic amenorrhea? Because we're not concerned with lowering estrogen and are trying to raise it instead. So yeah, I think that's pretty complicated. I think the way that I was someone with hypothalamic amenorrhea, I do not have PCOS. The way that I'm viewing it is that I think someone with hypothalamic amenorrhea clearly has a huge stress imbalance. And that's where I think that Ray Peat's nutrition strategies and ideas can be useful to help realign your stress levels. And so choosing dietary strategies and lifestyle factors that can help you avoid unnecessary stresses such as fasting a lot and potentially zero carbs. So that's my personal opinion and why I decided to add back in carbohydrates and stop fasting, because those are ultimately small stresses on the system. And for someone with hypothalamic amenorrhea, we are just trying to reduce the amount of stresses as much as we can, so that way our body can be more resilient to the unavoidable life stressors and we can dig ourselves out of that stress hole. So I think the way that I like to view Ray Peace nutrition strategies is like improving our metabolism and our thyroid are ultimately going to help us rebalance our hormones. So like hormones are a reflection of how your body is working in other areas. And so improving metabolism and base thyroid levels, which can ultimately help you get your period back and get your hormones back to a normal level. So that's how I'm kind of viewing the Ray Peace nutrition strategy. Okay, what are your thoughts about kefir and goat's milk? So I used to make kefir all the time, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a source for one of my digestive upsets. I noticed I feel a lot better on raw milk as opposed to kefir, and I think it's just the like fermented aspect of the kefir. I personally don't handle it that well. Ultimately, like overdoing fermented foods can be problematic for some people. Your liver requires energy and glucose to be able to convert the lactic acid from those fermented products back into glucose for your body to use. And so for someone who is in a really super stressed state, that can be like, it can cause some issues. And so I personally noticed that I feel better limiting my amount of like a lot of fermented foods. So I feel better on raw milk. Okay. Sorry, guys. Why might my energy be super low eating low carb, high protein for type 1 diabetes? Can a lack of fats or total calories cause fatigue? Eating under 30 grams of carbs and 1.5 grams per pound of protein. Yeah, so I think that eating low calorie is a huge issue that our society is just facing right now. For some reason, it's normalized that females should be eating like 1,200 calories is an acceptable diet for females. And that's almost laughable because that's like what a 3-year-old requires. I am not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to give someone advice for type 1 diabetes, but I do know that we, like, as humans, we are part of nature. Nature thrives in abundance. Nature thrives in biodiversity. And if you compare two situations, one where we're fasting a lot and depriving the body of nutrients and food and fuel, versus a situation where someone is providing the body with good quality food, I think that the body will thrive in a more of an abundant state of good food. Now, if we were comparing like the standard American diet to someone eating lower calorie, ultimately, like, you're reducing the amount of stressors and PUFAs that you were exposing yourself to in that other situation. But if someone is having low energy from a certain style of eating, I would definitely suggest changing up your ratios or trying to consume more fuel. Okay. What would be your advice for someone with Sibo? So I would say definitely work with a practitioner, whether that's, there's plenty of people in the pro-metabolic space that can do it in like a repeat pro-metabolic way. I think that there are definitely going to be like targeted supplements that you could get based on certain lab results. However, I do think that it's important to remember that like your body producing proper digestive enzymes and being able to properly break down your food requires a healthy metabolism. If someone's metabolism is suffering, your body is going to stop production of certain things that are non-essential for like surviving. So certain things that are essential are like keeping blood levels of, like, for example, sodium. So like keeping you alive, keeping you breathing, Whereas like producing sex hormones or having optimal digestive enzyme production isn't necessarily going to keep you alive. And so like some of those could be down regulated. So I think focusing on your metabolism is a super important piece to this. And then I would say working with some sort of functional medicine practitioner, or there are a few people in the pro-metabolic space that work on this stuff as well, to get rid of that. I think that should be a main focus, because that's going to limit the amount of foods that you can consume, and that will ultimately make it harder for you to consume a nutrient-dense diet. What would you consider to be over-exercising? That's a great question. That's going to vary from person to person. However, I think that you don't need to work out more than 3 to 4 times a week. And a really easy way to know if you are over-exercising is to use your waking body temperature and pulse as a way to assess that. So let's say you work out Monday and Tuesday, and then your waking body temperature on Wednesday is really low. Your waking body temperature on Thursday is really low. That's a sign you're doing too much. Your body is not having time to recover. I also think that more than like an hour in the gym is not really necessary. So use signs like your waking body temperature and also your like soreness level as signs that you're over exercising. And then I would also say that if you are choosing to work out, to prioritize strength training and potentially like sprints, as opposed to just like excessive cardio, because it can be really easy to overdo the cardio and stress your body out. And if your focus is like improving your metabolism, you should be focusing on strength training to build muscle. However, building muscle requires rest and recovery. So just keep that in mind. Someone said, if testosterone lowers when high cortisol is being produced because it leaves less for testosterone production, would increasing cholesterol maintain testosterone even while being high cortisol? Well, cholesterol maintains testosterone even while being high cortisol. I just think that like cortisol works against us in so many ways, and so we shouldn't really strive to have higher cortisol. And then also like so many factors are working against us right now in our current environment in 2021, with all of the EMFs and like the toxins and pollutions from like a lot of our agricultural practices and things like that. And then I don't think that having like slightly elevated cholesterol is a huge deal. But I know that when you have super elevated cholesterol, like I did previously, I was over like 400 to 500. That's like a clear sign of thyroid issues. So I wouldn't necessarily focus on increasing, like, I would say like reducing your cortisol would be a better strategy to improve your health. If any way that you can do that. Okay. I think that I covered all of the questions. If I missed your question, feel free to put it here. It's hard to kind of talk and focus on the chat at the same time. But yeah, like I said, make sure you guys are following the Angel Acres YouTube account. I'll put that in the description. The Angel Acres Instagram account. And if you're not following us on Strong.Sistas Instagram, we're a lot more active there right now as we're working on all these things like behind the scenes. Like the podcast and shipping eggs, and also make sure you check out Apsy Farms, www.apsyfarms.com, for some nutrient-dense meats delivered directly to your door. But yeah, with that, I'm heading on about 45 minutes. I'll take just a few more questions, and then I've got to hop off. Oh, got another question. What are your current macros? So I don't stick to a specific macro split right now. I'm kind of trying to follow my hunger cues, but I answered this earlier. I don't like to give specifics because everybody is unique. Every individual is unique. We all have different goals. We all have previous like pasts. We've all done various degrees of stupid shit in the past. And so we all have various degrees of recovery that we need to do. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel good with a 2-to-1 carb to protein ratio, and then a like roughly 70 to 85 grams of fat, kind of depending on how hungry I am that day and how much I've moved. But I am still recovering from hypothalamic amenorrhea, and so I am focusing on fully nourishing myself and giving my body an abundance of nutrients and calories. So your body, when it's healing and recovering, it requires not just nutrient-dense food, but also calories as well, as energy to improve my thyroid, improve my metabolism, and get my hormones and stress back in check. Someone said, what diet are you doing now? So I would definitely say that I'm implementing a lot of the repeat pro-metabolic, bioenergetic nutrition strategies. Now, this is not, I don't like to call it a diet, because Ray Peat has ultimately just like discussed nutrition principles, and he is all for like you implementing foods in a way that increases and improves your metabolism and your thyroid. And a really easy way to do that is by measuring your body temperature and pulse when you wake up, and then at a few times throughout the day. And it should be high in the morning, and it should increase as well throughout the day. So yeah, I would say it's kind of like easy to digest carbohydrate sources, healthy animal fats, animal protein. Yeah. And reducing PUFA exposure when I can, such as like vegetable oils, nuts, and seeds. There's a lot more specifics and nuances, but that's not for today's live. Okay. All right, guys, I'm at 46 minutes, and thanks, guys, for tuning in. Stay tuned for the podcast. And Austin just had a great summary. Most important is to find what works for you. Absolutely. There is no like one specific macro split or one specific set of food lists that is going to work for everyone. That's impossible. There are certain nutrition principles that you can apply to yourself to see if they help, such as limiting PUFAs, and prioritizing animal proteins, things like that. But yeah, okay. Someone said you should do a friendly debate between Ray Peat side and keto traditional side on your podcast. I think that would be fun to do in the future. So if you guys have any specific names on either side that you would prefer, you guys know where I would lean towards right now. I have clearly changed my mind, but I think that I have the perspective of both sides and could maybe be the mediator, the MC. But okay, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to tune out. As always, until the next live or YouTube video, behave like an angel.